Welcome back to the Nano Cruising Podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Marceau. Today we sit down with award-winning Canadian filmmaker, Dianne Whelan. We cover her film 500 Days in the Wild, which documents her epic journey across Canada. It's a story about canoeing, on foot, and really about deep conversation with the land and its people. Thank you, Dianne, for joining us. Watched your video, like I said, twice. Really enjoyed it. It's really, how do I say that? It's really amazing. You did the 500 Days in the Wild. That's what it's called, but it's, I don't know, how many days. It's actually probably almost 3,000 overall. I don't know.
1,862.
Oh, wow. Okay, so there you go. So where you cross Canada, you did biking, walking, canoeing, snowshoes. Did I forget anything?
Country skiing
Country
sometimes.
skiing as well. Yeah, you did everything. So I'm so happy to have you and tell us a bit about your journey and how you got into that. I mean, you have other movies and so on, but that one really particularly was very fascinating. I love the connection to the earth and so on, and the respectful for the Indigenous because it's their land that we're trying to take care of. So tell me about how you got into what gave you that idea to do the cross Canada Trail.
Well, that's there's two, and it's Stephen, right? I'm saying that with Stefan.
Yeah.
Okay, my mother's French. I would hate to get that Stefan. My name is Dianne Stefan. So there we go. Now we know. My mother's Acadian.
There you go.
So the idea, and it's probably that Acadian blood, honestly, but no, the idea came because first of all, I'm a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker.
Correct.
And I write books and take pictures. And I had made a film on Mount Everest called 40 Days Space Camp. And I'd made a film up in the high Arctic of Canada embedded as on a sovereignty patrol with 7 men, 4 Inuit men, 5 Canadian Rangers, 5 of whom were 5 Canadian Rangers, and 2 were the Canadian Army, a sergeant and a commanding officer. And I somehow talked these guys into taking me on this historical mission up into the Arctic. So I admit I've been on one of the world's most northern coastlines, and I'd been on the world's highest mountain. So as a filmmaker, certainly there was an intrigue with this idea of Canada making the longest recreational trail in the world, like right here on our land, in our home. And so that kind of caught my attention as a documentary filmmaker. But then when you actually considered it, you're like, oh my God, like, how would you even do that? There's 24,000 kilometers of land and water trails. I would just want to do one continuous line. But that's still something like 487 different trails. And it included like 8,000 kilometers almost of paddling, which I did in a canoe. And it just seemed like that is beyond possibility. It really did. But it caught my attention. And when something, as a storyteller, you don't know what's going to catch your heart,
Right.
And it takes incredible amount of passion and belief to make something happen. Like to make a film and to release a film is way harder than doing the trail, honestly. And, it's hard. We won't get into the sidetrack of that right now, but enough to say I'm a filmmaker. So that's on a professional level what really drew me to this idea.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
What created the opportunity to do that was my marriage of 13 years, relationship I'd been into for 13 years had ended. And my dog of 16 years had died. And I suddenly found myself at 50, turning 50, at a place in my life where everything that tethered me to one spot was gone. And so of course, there was great sadness with the loss that I was experiencing. There was grief in the loss I was experiencing in my life.
Of course.
And the hard lessons I was learning. But there was also opportunity. So not suddenly this crazy idea I had that was totally impossible. How could you say to your partner, hey, I'm going away, don't know for how long, I'm in the middle of nowhere, completely unfinanced, just fully believe in this idea, ciao. That's not going to work out, right? But second, I had nothing.
Right.
No holding me to one spot. And I just thought, you know what? I'm going to try to do this.
Right.
And I didn't have money. I mean, I own my own production company. All my films are made by me, and I somehow find a magic way of making them happen. And I never know how that's going to happen, but it all begins with belief, self. And you know, Ben, like even on your paddle trips or your journeys, once you get that idea, then finding yourself suddenly on the water, living out the expression of this idea, like it's a pretty powerful manifestation, creation
It is.
of things, right? But that's what life is. It's these experiences. And if we're really lucky, they're the experiences of our heart, of our passions, of our loves, of the things that make us feel more alive, right? So anyway, the opportunity presented itself in my personal life, and then on a professional life, I make documentaries, and I knew
Perfect.
that making a film on the longest trail in the world that not only had never been done,
Right.
but no one had ever seen, or certainly no one had filmed, was a really unique opportunity. And I just decided I'd go out there and try it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. One day at a time. Sorry.
One day at a time.
Tell us how it was. I mean, it's hard to condense 25,000 kilometers. I mean,
well, there's an old saying, it was the best of times and the hardest of times. I mean, wow. I'm so honored that I loved myself, that I gifted myself this opportunity in my life to step away from the wheel of needing to make money. To make this film, I was willing to walk away from my home. I sold my car and I got rid of all my bills. So suddenly what I required financially a month was a mere couple $100 if you're like buying bulk oatmeal and pancake mix and stuff like that. And my bike was 40 years old and my backpack was 15, and I didn't go running around trying to find sponsorships. I just got myself ready. And I looked at what I had and what I could pick up at a secondhand store, or I did it more like a pilgrim, really. I mean, I guess it's more, it's more of a vision quest than it was anything else, honestly. But, it wasn't like most adventure films are. Let's just put it that way. It was kind of the antithesis of that, in that it wasn't about seeking sponsorship. It wasn't about anybody. It was just getting myself there and figuring out how to do it. So, on one level, and then it was just the physical reality. I mean, to prepare, I had gone to my grandmother's farm. She's died decades ago, but her farmhouse still stands in a very small French Acadian village called Saint-Damien in New Brunswick. And I knew through the fall and winter, no one would be there. And in this village, just a couple of people. And so I decided to leave my home in preparation of my journey. I would leave from Newfoundland, but my idea of training wasn't just the physical training. Of course, I did some physical training, but like not 10 hours a day. I was just out there 2 hours a day, skiing in the winter months, riding my bike or running around or hiking in the drier days. But I mean, most of it was inside training. It was, how am I going to deal with panic? How am I going to deal with fear? Because, fear is not a bad thing, but you have to confront it, and that's that. But panic will kill you. So, I began to, first of all, test my capacity of being alone for a month and just how that felt for me. And it made me feel great. I actually turned out I was born for this. No problem with that. And then I also took up and I still am just in preschool in this, but some meditation. I'm not daily about it. I should be. But when I was out on the trail, I was much more disciplined about maintaining these as a part of my process. How about that? Just to stay safe, grounded, the need to be grounded, right? And then also some yin yoga, which is just stretches, which you kind of see me doing in my tent periodically throughout the film. But, just self-care. And I think one of the interesting things about an extreme journey, at least for me, was the priority of self-care. Because I don't prioritize it all the time. I'm just like a push hard girl, get it done, And I realized, that's not possible on this journey. You got to take the rabbit suit off and put on the turtle shell and just surrender to it. Surrender to it. It's going to take as long as it's going to take. Every day you wake up, You're connecting to your physical environment. You're not connecting to the news. You're not connecting to, you're just connecting to what are the clouds doing today? What's the wind? What's the temperature? What animal tracks are in the mud around me? That kind of connection.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
You probably miss not being out there now.
I do. I do. I mean, fortunately, as I said, I live in Garden Bay, so I'm in
a good place.
I live on a few acres in the woods. My studio is an old little chicken barn that I converted that I'm in right now, talking to you in. I have big grandmother trees around me, and so it's really easy for me to be very much still connected to the web of life as my primary connection on this planet.
That's fantastic.
Before humanity,
Yes.
my primary connection is to this web of life, and I feel that. That's where I draw all my creative inspiration, and all my everything. So, yeah, I'm lucky that way, but I do travel a lot, and it's funny when I'm traveling, like, people look for different things when they land in a city, and I'm looking for the oldest trees, the green spaces. Right. I'm finding those places that I can go sit in the middle of my day and still connect. And, I'm downtown London and I'm like sitting in parks and I'm seeing foxes and stuff. So, I mean, we coexist. And if you're silent and quiet enough, you'll find it when.
Good point. In the movie, you said one time, you said you're not an extreme athlete. You're not.
No,
but
no, an artist, man. I'm more like Emily Carr, minus the monkey. Yeah.
But I think you became an extreme athlete. I mean, you have to do that. Right?
Sure. Listen, you go out every day. I have pictures that I never showed in the film. I have 800 hours of footage that I shot. Right. So.
Right.
We're working on the idea of releasing a limited series right now, just because there's so much content. It's so rich. Yes. There's so many more people I met.
Yes.
To just give a greater tapestry, of the kindness right now seems like a great idea. But in any case, I shot all that footage. And so, it was just, there are photographs of where I have counting and numbering the bruises on my body in those first 3 weeks leaving St. John's, pushing my bike on that crush rock and like taking some good wipeouts going, oh yeah, you're not 22 anymore. Like, riding this mountain bike through single tracks on Grouse Mountain, you're like, you just turned 50 and you're like packing too much weight, on this bike right now. And, I think that's the other thing is I didn't go out there just to do this job. I went out there to make a high-end film. When I go out to do something creatively, I do it at the highest quality I can. It's like, it's my passion. It's my art. I would say the film came before the desire personally to do the journey. The reward was how much the journey has healed me and changed me. And, the gifts of doing it, of course, were amazing. But it was the film. Like I was always, that was really, there's no division in my life between my life and my work, and I love what I do and it's what I do every day, whether I'm paid to or not. And most days I'm not paid to. So that shows you how much I love it, and, so it's really, I always say we're not what we say we want. We are what we're willing to suffer for. So those bruises, people would go, oh my God, I would have quit right then. And I'm like, when you really love what you do and you're really excited about your journey, that just seems like, I don't know, you don't really give it any weight, really. But if you were doing something you were unhappy with, I'm sure every bruise would be like a screaming, on you'd be, no. Right? It's interesting what we're willing to endure when we're really in alignment with, I think, our passions and our purpose and just our spirit. Like that's what, you're there when it makes you feel so alive.
Right. At one point, you saying you had friends joining you and, they were saying, oh my God, this is horrible. And you said, and you said, no, I love this. I'm good. I love this.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It is. And it's an interesting sort of thing about human perception too, right? Reality is an interpretation. Yes, somebody's garden is somebody else's hell, and that's something to remember. We get so rigid in our beliefs and in our way and just, there isn't, there's not a right way. There's as many ways as there are stars in the sky, and we know that's infinite. So, that's how many ways there are. And, but anyway, the nice thing is when there's 9 billion people on a planet, if you're sincere to yourself, there's someone somewhere that's exactly like you.
As crazy as you.
You're not really alone. There's a tribe. There's
a
tribe.
There's a tribe, definitely. Tell us about the canoe section. I think I love that because Canada, canoe is Canada, really. So
okay,
you think of Farley-Moore. You think yes. Tell us about it. Yes,
the canoeing was my favorite part of the whole journey, and that's one of the gifts of the journey was I fell in love with canoeing, and I had done a little bit of it, but I had never gone like on a solo for even a week. And my first paddle, 500 days in the wild, which is actually 1,862 days in the wild. My first paddle was a 40-day paddle on Brador Lake, which is an inland sea, which looks like a big octopus and actually comes with a lot of challenges.
It's pretty challenging. Yes.
Winds changing all the time, rip tides coming off of points when you have all of those bends. And I was naive. Like I was learning on the job, like I said, I've been active all my life. I did Outward Bound as a teenager. I'm not saying I had zero, but I'm just saying like, it's just, I'm not at the gym every day. I'm not that person, it's just, I go for walks every day,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, there's just anyway. Yeah, it was intense, but at the same time, I don't know. There was something about it was my favorite way to travel. It's the most ancient trails on this land, of course, and one of the most ancient ways of traveling. And you drop into that. Something really ancient woke up in my DNA out there, especially 2 years later when I did those 4 months on Lake Superior and then moving right into Path of the Paddle, when you spend that kind of time, and a lot of it was alone, out there, and I show one night, where I get stuck out there in the darkness, but there was a few. I mean, I pulled into Thunder Bay at 3:30 in the morning, and the only reason I found my way was someone built a big bonfire, honestly, and a lot of luck. But yeah, but there was just something, I can't explain it. I want to say it was almost very spiritual for me on the water.
Nice.
And like I said, almost at the beginning too, there's something profound about being on that horizon line of water beneath you and air, above you, and you're right on that line. And, what happened, and, part of it was through the very kind and open invitations into some Indigenous communities, many actually over the 6 years where I listened and learned, and that certainly, as I, carried a feather as part of my own reconciliation journey across this country and
Correct.
honor the ancestors of this land. And it was really on the water, where I really started to sense the first going from being on something to traveling with. And that happened for me on Lake Superior, and it was a very profound feeling. And what navigated me always through the fear on the water was, by connecting to it, I wasn't afraid of it, right? It got me through those moments. But, all of that came through the teachings that I was, privy to by listening and learning on my journey in those communities, especially the Anishinaabe, of course, around the shores of Lake Superior.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I attended some water ceremonies, and I did a week ceremony in Agua Park with some elders as well. So, yeah, that really shifted my relationship. And being in the canoe on the water is it's hard to explain, but it's something I definitely felt and still do. I always have my hand in the water, just thanking the water for life. And, when I was taught near the beginning, as you travel, I thought I was traveling the old ways, Stefan, because I was not using motors,
Mm-hmm.
But I learned with my time in the Mi'kmaq communities in both Newfoundland and in Cape Breton and Nova Scotia, really, and New Brunswick, because they're all over through there. But Yeah, that traveling the old way wasn't the fact that I didn't have a motor. Traveling the old way is what you carry in your heart on your journey.
Okay.
So with every step on the land to say the earth is sacred, the earth is sacred, and with every stroke of your paddle in the water to say the water is sacred, the water is sacred. And, I was told if I traveled that way, I would be safe because I would be protected. And I didn't need my rational mind to explain that to me. I accepted this wisdom as a gift, and I brought it into my heart. And whenever I was afraid, I'm not going to say that every 24 hours a day I was saying those words, but they were spoken every day. And it's the humility of the fear really too. It opens you up to prayer. It opens you up to something else out there sometimes. So I would do that. And certainly on the water through those dark nights, it was like, the water is sacred, the water is sacred, the water is sacred. And that's where the connection shifted from fear of to connection with.
I could see your connection to the animals, right? You saved a bird. You have pictures of
Yeah. Yeah.
fishes and
Well, they are just
toad.
as fragile as we are out here,
They are. They are right.
Yeah, we all are. And again, there's humility in that as well. But also just that when people always ask me, Stefan, like, are you lonely out there? And it was like so interesting because no, I never was. Because humans are, and I keep saying it's like 0.1% of all life on Earth. And it's easy to fill our reality with just that 0.1% when you're watching the news 24 hours a day and
Correct.
reading, filling your head with that. But there's a whole other reality out there. And connecting when you're in nature, whether it's in the park down the road, just watching a robin building a nest, or a squirrel undigging a nut, whatever it is, a butterfly on a flower, man. Or when you're actually out there on the water for a week or an expedition, or you're in the woods for some time, you start it's that web of life, man. And that is the other 99.9%. And that also is a reality. And it's taking place without all the drama that we create in our 0.1%. Okay. Yeah. Like there's drama and, watch an eagle kill a poor sparrow. And then you watch the other sparrow looking for its partner and it can't find it. There's sorrow, there's drama, but it's different, like it's a part of the web of life. And, so yeah, and I feel these days, just for mental health and well-being for people, just even more so, more than ever, especially children, or that connection to nature. Because if kids just look at a tree and they see lumber for houses, we're screwed.
That's right.
Yes, we can thank the tree for the lumber for the houses, but we also create our oxygen. They convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. Their sap has medicines. They have wisdom. You see that lesson in the forest where, hey, we are like the trees. On the surface, it looks like these trees stand alone, but beneath them, all their roots are interconnected, just like us. Tree wisdom. You know what I'm saying? Like there's so much more, and you got to bring that alive in a child, because then they grow up understanding our place not as a dominion over everything, but as a part of this web of life. And if our only goal here is that we are tomorrow's ancestors and it's the survival of our species, okay, that's the bottom line here. So, that's what's sacred, the water. No kidding, because without water, we're not just us, but everything's dead. So, and that's what everyone's running after right now, by the way. The oil is a facade. Everyone's actually trying to buy up all the water right now. So, that's what's sacred. So you really, I just became quite fervent and still am about, the importance of all of that as a main part of our reality.
So do you find there's a Dianne before that trip and a Dianne after? It's. I think
Well,
it changed you quite a bit. hasn't it?
It did change me quite a bit. I mean, like you said, I admit to it as much in the film where I was a fervent individualist, really, and I still am. People would laugh to say, "Well, how did this journey change you?" I mean, to be an artist, and I live out in the woods, and I collaborate with lots of other creative people, but I do spend a lot of time alone. But no, the importance of the collective, the importance of things that I always cared about. But yeah, it definitely changed me. Uh, and I think in other ways too, just in terms of self-care, like having to prioritize my self-care, having to really learn boundaries, to keep yourself safe out there. It's just really the self-awareness around that. There was a lot of little things that I didn't notice until I came back. But anytime we take on a challenge, whether it's just if you've never, if you count your broken leg and then suddenly, okay, I got to walk a block, right? Anytime we take on a challenge and we move ourselves forward, it raises the bar in every aspect of your life. That's what's so profound about the outdoors, like you climb up mountain and you don't think you're going to make it to the top. It's too hard. It's too high. And then you get there and you're standing at the top. It's not just that mountain, now in what other areas in your life where you think you couldn't do or weren't capable, they also expand. Emotionally, what you're capable of in terms of relationships or yourself or so, all of those things are expanding when you raise that bar. Not just, oh, I'm physically capable. I'm capable in many ways, right?
Right.
It makes you less afraid to take on the dream, And I've always thought, the greatest act of self-love is to gift yourself those passions that you have, right? I've seen great success come from that. I remember there was a 15-year-old kid up at Whistler when snowboarding first came out. I was a photographer up there for the newspaper, and I was a little redhead 15-year-old kid, and his parents, they're living in this ghetto RV in the parking lot, and I start talking to them, and they had careers, they had a house, everything, but kid wasn't doing so well in school, loved snowboarding. Well, that guy went on, what's his name? Sean. That guy went on to become the gold medal winner and got millions of dollars of endorsements by the time he was 20. Not such a bad plan to just follow and lean into your passions. That's where your greatness is going to come, man, because you're never going to measure your hourly wage. You're not going to measure your life that way. And if you're willing to, be on time and break your butt for $20 an hour or $25 an hour or whatever your wage is an hour for somebody else, why wouldn't you give yourself that same self-discipline, that same respect in working for yourself, right? I'm going to show up on time. I'm going to be there every day. I'm, working for myself doesn't mean, yeah, it's a free, it's like, no, if you're late, you lose your job. Well, if you don't self-commit to yourself, you're going to lose that too. You know what I mean? And it's just, that's the shift that's the shift, that comes when you spend time out there.
That's amazing.
Which is lean in. Yeah, this is the way to live your life. And it's just an experience. That's all. We're never going to arrive. Wherever we think we're going, it's constantly the journey, right? So
yes.
Until we transition into whatever happens next.
Yes. Would you recommend people to do that? Of course you would. Of course you would. But then the next question is probably is, a lot of people are dreamers at home and so on. What would you give what advice would you give them to get over that first step to actually go and do something? Right? That's the hard part, I think.
It is. You're right. That's always the first step, and that's a great question. Okay, I'll answer it by just being honest about the way I did it, which is the day one leaving on that journey from Newfoundland. I did not have 6 years figured out. I didn't even know where 98% of those trails were, what they were named, what I was going to do, nothing. All I was focused on, I had this big goal, and it was in my mind. Okay, I'm going to do this 24,000 kilometer trail. That's it over there. And then I let go. And then it was about the here and now, small steps. Any big dream, like that mountain metaphor, you got to break it down into the small steps. So my goal day one was get through trail one, which was the 988 kilometers or 888 kilometers of a rail line trail across the middle of Newfoundland. And at the end of that, I would have to take a ferry to Cape Breton walk 12K and get in a canoe. So first goal, let's make it through this 980. And now all my focus is on that. And then once I'm on that, all my focus is on what I need on the day to day, just the practical, and I didn't consume myself with how far I had to go on any given day.
You did at the beginning, and then you
I did at the beginning.
And then you threw it out. And then you threw it out. It's like, forget it.
Of course, like everybody, I didn't have the 500 days planned out, but I absolutely, you're right, had the first, couple months figured out. And it was like make believe. Okay. Like I was sitting on my kitchen table and when I'm going to go that far, looking at the map, and then I'm going to go that far. And it's like, fa la 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 la. Like that's make believe. Like if you're really going to do this, you got to let go of like that imaginary world that you had at your kitchen table with the map. Burn that schedule exactly and surrender to the journey, right?
That's right.
And because I had nothing tying me when I left home, well, qu'est-ce que c'est la rush, as my cousin used to say. Anyway, yeah, what's the rush, right? Like and I mean, I'm out there as a filmmaker. I want to make a film. That means at any given day, I might strike my camp. I might load up all my gear. I might launch off, and then 10 minutes later, oh my God, there's a moose. The day just changed, right? It's like, get off get the camera, all right, try to be really quiet. Become both the observer and the observed, and yeah, so it's just being responsive, being adaptive. I think my main thing is whatever you think your plan is going to be, it's not going to be that. So just, have the goal and be willing to start without having it all figured out. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just have to have one day today. What are you going to do today? That's all you got to have figured out in terms of moving one step towards that goal, right? And baby steps, and then some days it's just like, imagine if you made one call a week or made one step. I always, it's one step at a time.
Right. And
don't let the big goal or the big dream overwhelm you because it seems impossible, because everything I've done was impossible. I am not, but if you were waging in Vegas on, hey, what are the odds on that woman leaving St. John's making this 24,000 kilometer trail alive? I'm going to tell you, like, they would have been bad. Okay? Come on. Just from every practical standpoint.
Right.
You see me. I'm losing my tents. They're breaking.
Yeah, I don't know how many tents you went through. At
5 in the first 3 months,
That's right.
I mean, my windows came out, glue malfunction. And for the record, no tent was left out there. The one that I never did find did get found. Somebody got a new tent out of it. I later learned. But the point is, it's like, sometimes people think when they hear I broke tents that there's these broken tents left out in nature. And no, clearly I leave a zero imprint thing. I did lose one on a trail. It was found on the trail by someone else. Anyway, clarification there. Yeah. But yeah, I went through 5 tents. And, the soles of my shoes are coming off in the second week. And, I'm, like I said, I was covered in bruises. And I was just like, yeah, I mean, I failed camping school in every way, shape, or form. Like, and, I wasn't afraid to show that in the film. No, because I think that is an example. That film and that journey is a perfect example of just how to do it. I just committed myself. And, it's the greatest, it's self-love.
Yes.
It's self-love. It's like, if you love something, you love sailing, you love canoeing, and it is imperative that you gift yourself these opportunities when you can in some shape or form, because it's what keeps your spirit alive, man.
Absolutely.
So that we can manage the rest of this heavy stuff by being a human as part of human society. Right. And our global responsibility as tomorrow's ancestors, really, we are all like, no matter how different we are, we all share that one responsibility. And so yeah, you're a better person when you're loving yourself and you're gifting yourself. I think we're so used to buying things to get what we want. And when it comes to your dreams, it's not something you can buy. It's actually a verb. It's action. It's like, thought must become deed. And that is a verb. You got to act on this for yourself, right? But it's like a ball. Once it starts going, it picks up momentum and it becomes pretty. And like I said, when your spirit's alive and you're excited, of course things are going to come into place. And as long as you can let go of preconceived notions and adapt to the things that are unfolding around you, you'll be safe. When you try to impose your will, you will die out there. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. You have to adapt.
Oh, I only have 2 weeks and I have to get 500 kilometers on this lake. And it's, oh my God, it's 6-foot swells, but we have to go because we have to. You're dead.
Yeah.
You're not going to last long out there, man. Or, and if you do, it's not a good example. I mean, it's all about the humility of surrender, really, and working with what you're working with. And hey, there are different skill levels. There are people that could have paddled in days that I chose not to take the risk because I also always didn't know what was ahead of me. Every step I took on a land trail, every paddle stroke on a canoe was new land for me. Right. I'd never been on any of these trails, so everything was new. Not knowing what was always ahead, making very safe and conservative decisions. If it was like rough water, I just was like, well, I'm going to stay in my tent today or do some filming, write my journal, sew that button on, make extra food, rest, read a book, just like do some yoga, do some stretching, do some meditating, and just wait for the right moment, and we're not used to that, right? Get in your car and go, oh, it's snowing. I've got to get to work, even though everyone's going to be in a car accident in Vancouver because nobody has winter tires. But I'm so important. I got to get there, and it's like ridiculous, right? It's like, forget imposing your will, man, and connect. Just go out there to connect with, and you'll be safe. It's process. It's not it's not even the goal. It's who we show up as and how we do what we do. That's really the determining factor. And like I said, if you keep that wisdom, I was told, which is like, your journey is going to be shaped no matter what you do in life by what you carry in your heart. Just remember that one. I can say I that was true for me.
You talk a little bit about safety, and you touch on it in the movie. You want to touch a little bit about safety for women on the road?
I know what it is, and it's a tough one.
And it's understandable.
It is understandable, and it's a tough one, but it's so interesting. So yeah, I was afraid. Just that was my first big fear, honestly, is being a woman alone in my tent. There's no lock on the door, right? And, we live in a culture now where I know lots of great men, but there is a lot of violence against women by men. And it's so interesting because when you talk to Indigenous elders, they say in the old world, right, men's job was to protect women and women's job was to protect the earth. And now you look at the state of the ecology, women are not doing their job and men aren't doing theirs. When you look at the statistics of the violence and the femicide, really the amount of murder, even espousal murders and stuff, it's pretty shocking, let alone obviously the very shocking statistics also around murdered and missing Indigenous women in Canada, but around the world. So all of that we know, we have a self-awareness of this, and we're taught as young girls to beware of that certain uncle, or that certain person, or, you're parking your car at night, you are now prey for a predator, so it's hard not to grow up with a certain, and everyone knows someone, every woman knows someone who's had a bad situation, more often than not with the dude that she knew, right? Now, I'm sure men can, I'm so careful around how I use these words because we really are, one. But anyway, so yeah, I had to face that fear. And one of the things I really tried to show in this film were the nice guys that helped me out as part of the healing for me, because by taking the risk, I put myself in a vulnerable position. And then, I did meet men out there in the worst of circumstances, in a storm, it's blackout, I'm lost. So everything already, and it's not my first, but one of my earlier, like, oh my God, I'm really terrified right now. I can see I'm in danger, right? I'm in a kind of a hurricane in Nova Scotia in the fall. It's like the end of a Florida hurricane, but like trees are snapping. There's so much water on the ground. I can't figure out how I'm going to safely put up a tent. And then, after being lost, my phone has stopped working. My GPS isn't working. My paper map is now pulp because I didn't laminate the damn thing. I'm in a bad situation, And then in the distance, I see these lights, and you think I would have been happy, but I wasn't. I was terrified because I was already scared. So I was looking at the world through this lens of fear, man. So up called these guys, and, they're in their camo. Then they're hunting camo. They got guns. I'm like, again, I'm already afraid. Everything in me is like, screaming, fear factor 5.
Right.
But I have to trust them. Like, I'm in such a bad situation. And I mean, it requires leaving my equipment, some of my equipment behind. I don't know where I am, and I'm going to get in this thing, and I'm going to a hunting thing. I'm going to some hunting cabin, Not good. Anyway, I trust them. I get in, and they, of course, were the nicest guys.
They're wonderful. They were wonderful. Yes.
They're amazing men.
Yeah.
They brought me into the cabin. They cranked up that damn fire. They were sweating profusely just so everything could dry because it was pouring rain outside. So we dried all my gear. They fed me deer meat, gave me a cigar. We ate cake, they got the maps out. We figured out where I went wrong. They got me back to the trail the next day. So I tried to, in sharing that, it's like, yeah, this was it. This had the packaging of every woman's worst nightmare. And I had to confront that fear. I was forced to, and I was wrong in that moment. Now, it's not to say that we still don't have to have that kind of awareness. I did have bear spray. Mm-hmm. I wasn't completely naive. Like, when I could only take a few things with me out in those bush, I did have that. And I did have my spot, which they did not know. So somebody would have known where I was had I suddenly gone missing. Mm-hmm. So I was able to make some very quiet decisions. I had a safety backup plan, but at the same time, I'm so glad that I confronted that fear. And in the 6 years I was on the trail, as a woman, a lot of time alone, and mostly it's men that I met out there, hunters, fishermen, mostly, mm-hmm. I would say, as my dominant, as far as just bumping into someone in the middle of nowhere. I was only shown kindness by everyone.
Wonderful.
So
you're less afraid now? You're more.
Yeah, because fear is like a weed in your garden, man. Mm-hmm. If you keep eating it, it grows and mm-hmm. it gets deeper. But because I had that experience over 6 years, now those fears are unsubstantiated. Yes, it's out there, but it's not like every dude. So it's like, you might get hit by lightning. You might meet mm-hmm. might meet that dude. You might meet that mean bear, and you might meet 90 bears that are just fine. There's always going to be a maybe, but it's not the dominant.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not like and it's just breaking through that. And the only way you could do that is to confront the fear, right? Mm-hmm. And do it as wisely as possible. I mean, I'm just always, you are ultimately always responsible for yourself. So you've got to be smart about it. But, when I say boundaries, when I did have those exchanges too, I was very clear about my boundaries, right? Everything was very transparent mm-hmm. and those boundaries were respected. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's what I'm saying too, is that that's why you have to learn those when you're going to move through the world that way. You got to take on as much personal responsibility as you can in terms of your protection. And part of that is just really being, a kind of connection and the energy that you bring to those connections that really sets the tone for the situation, right? That might unfold.
Right. And I wanted to ask, I have to ask about Louisa Robinson.
Yeah, Louisa. No, that's one of the great gifts that came from the journey, of course, is I left alone and I finished in a relationship, with a person that, a great spirit, a beautiful human being had been my friend for many, many, many years and not where I thought we would go. But, 5 months in a canoe, heading up to the Arctic Ocean.
Thank you for your time. It's been wonderful talking to you again.
Yeah.
It's really enlightening. I think our listeners are going to learn a lot from that. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
What a great story. What an inspiration. I am so blessed being able to connect to people like that want to connect with nature through the water. Talking about being blessed on this podcast about meeting great people. Our next episode is with none other than John Welsford. John is a great boat designer from New Zealand. He's famous and has designs all over the world. It's very exciting to talk to him, so come back for that. In the meantime, if you like the podcast, share with your friends, give us inputs on upcoming guests, and last but not least, seize your own adventure.